Hello, friends. Welcome to Kirk Your Enthusiasm. Today, I am joined by my internet friend who I just met like 3 minutes ago, Jasmyn Wimbish. She is a writer at CBSSports.com, and we have talked on the internet about these Dallas Mavericks for many years, and I have always kind of lazily tried to get you on and then never followed up, and then something weird happened. The Dallas Mavericks made the finals, and I could put it off no longer. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad that we finally got to do this. I'll take some ownership too. We both dropped the ball a couple times, I feel like.
Well, I see. The thing is, though, like I look through like your body of work and like what you've done in like the last 24 hours, for example, and it's hard to find time to do more things. So
yeah, it is.
before we talk a little Mavs, why don't you give kind of our audience a little background about what makes you like why we even talked in the first place, besides the fact that you cover basketball, because I think if I remember correctly, you have like a bit of a Dirk adjacent origin story. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I've been a Mavericks fan since like the Dirk, Mike Finley, Steve Nash days, but like it was because I have an older brother and we always played video games together, and I was never able to beat him. We played like NBA Live back in the early 2000s, and I would just pick like a random team all the time. And one time I picked the Mavericks, and I'm just tossing the ball to Dirk and he's just making 3-pointers all the time. And I'm like, this is great. This is now my favorite team. And I've been obsessed with them since. So
that's a pretty good basis. So you've been adjacent to the team for as long as some of our fans who are, here with the podcast. That's what it's very strange writing about basketball on the internet is you see everybody kind of age with you. I am. And like, Josh Bowe, my co-host, used to be a bit of a beat reporter, and he wanted to do the beat reporting thing. He wanted to go out and do it, but it didn't work the way, because it's a tough industry to break into.
Yeah. And
I berated him into accepting a finals credential, and he's going. Now
That's
as we're
amazing.
trying to figure out the logistics of like how he's actually going to do it with like family and kids and all this stuff on top of his job. And it's like, oh, this is why we stopped doing all this. Like, this is an incredible amount of work.
Yeah, just the regular season alone is exhausting. 82 games is way too much. I'm based in Chicago, so I go to Bulls games and they're awful. So going to those games is even worse. So it's just like, all right, well, this is very taxing.
It is. It's just a lot. And the flip side of it is, like why we're talking today, there's quite literally always something to talk about. And that makes it both fun and very, very taxing. And speaking of something to talk about, I'd assumed we'd come in here and talk a little bit about this series and where do the Mavericks go from here, et cetera. And then about an hour and a half ago, Shams Charania tweeted a Harry Potter spell that inevitably the long and the short of what happened to poor Kristaps Porzingis is he has an ankle injury that sounds really like Jeff Stotts of In Street Clothes said he doesn't have this injury in his database, which
interesting.
Like he has one like adjacent to it. And he said like it resulted in the person having to get surgery. And if I'm understanding, I've only been able to read here and there. Joe Mazzulla, who is, he strikes me as like being incapable of telling a lie.
Yeah.
And he is just almost the kind of person who he came out and said, like, this is a serious injury. Like, we're taking this seriously. This is not something to just kind of brush aside. Whereas then KP's out there, he gives the explainer with the, I almost feel bad for the guy. He's got like this look on his face, like, come on. But he's smiling through the pain. And I don't have any idea to expect. What is your reading of the tea leaves as someone who does this professionally?
Some of it seems like some gamesmanship from the Celtics. Cause like you said, I'm reading this injury report and it says torn, dislocated, and then the very last sentence is like, oh, but he's day to day. I don't know how those two things are at all related at all. Like,
right.
I don't get how they go in the same category. But I mean, then Woj is also saying that, like, KP is saying that, you know, at this point, there's no indication that he won't play in game 3. So
See,
I
just have a hard time with this because it's the finals, and Porzingis not at 100% is a, I mean, at least in my experience, actively detrimental to a team concept. Not because it's just his body. Yeah. Where if you have to coordinate around how he is feeling or his pain tolerance, it just doesn't work. I mean, we watched the Celtics in game 1 and he comes out on the floor and it was like a hot knife through butter, where all of a sudden, oh my goodness, what's going on here? But the Dallas Mavericks experience is the poor guy, shambles up and down the floor as hard as he can. But that's the one thing I do want to make clear. I'm not making fun of the guy. He is a warrior who wants to play through everything.
Yeah.
He just can't do it. And I feel a little bit of feel bad for him, because it's not like, I mean, I've heard stories of certain players that just don't want to play unless they're 100%. And Porzingis very much strikes me as a guy who I will do it, but it just strikes me as dangerous. I mean, the guy's had like 30 lower body injuries at this point.
Yeah. I definitely feel for KP because, I think before this, like when he was playing for the Mavericks, I never really got the indication that, like, well, one, he was, I feel like, injured all the time when he was with Dallas. But like you said, he clearly really, really wants to play. But Boston has made it clear that, like, it's in the medical team's hands at this point. So I feel like, I don't know, it feels like a 50-50 shot. Like, I feel like they're just going to wake up tomorrow, see how he goes through shoot around, pregame routine, and then kind of make a call. But I don't know. It just feels like Boston's kind of not really wanting to show their cards to Dallas and make them kind of game plan for KP, but also maybe he might play. I don't know. Maybe he'll play 10 minutes and then he's out. I have no idea. It's really difficult to read right now.
Which brings us to sort of what we would end up talking about inevitably, that the Mavericks are staring at an 0-2 hole. And when I'm like, I do these random TV appearances in Austin. I don't know how that happened, but the broadcast guy was like, well, you sound really negative about this. Well, because I mean, five teams in history, right? It's happened 5 times that a team 5-0 has come back. So I mean, you've seen me on the internet. I attempt to be pragmatic, but I come off as negative, and I don't know how to feel about this at this point, because a team that's won 78 games and lost 20 of them, beating them 4 times in 5 games strikes me as like Herculean. Am I nuts? Yeah. Where are you on this right now?
I mean, after game 1, I was very dejected. It was very, like, that was an awful game to watch. And then game 2, they started out, they came out like up 13-6, I feel like, in the first like 5 minutes. And then it just felt like this is a game that the Mavericks have to win based on how the Celtics were shooting from 3. And then you get to the final 5 minutes and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot the Celtics have the best team in basketball, historically great offense. Like after game 2, I just kind of feel like, I don't want to say, I'm not like, don't want to use like negative or pessimistic. I do feel like their chances of winning game 3, I feel positive about it. KP injury aside, I just feel like, one, we've seen the Mavericks come back from a 2-0 deficit before. Granted, that was an entirely different team roster in general.
Interestingly enough, a 64-win team that they beat.
Yes.
I don't know, it doesn't mean anything, but if you're into numerology, lean in.
And I mean, Kyrie has played god awful through the first 2 games. So I feel like something's got to swing the other way eventually. And I feel like game 3 is kind of that opportunity. So I'm not like the sky is falling completely. I'll have to see how game 3 goes, because I feel like obviously if they lose game 3, then it's like, all right, well, just win 1 and don't get swept type thing. Right. But I feel like game 3 is very winnable right now.
Like I have some pride sort of moment.
Yes.
And that just, man, the game 3 of it all, I I'm still very curious as to how to feel. You know, we got I think Tim McMahon was the one who reported that Luka got basically like a pain injection
Yeah,
to
in
help
his
deal with his
chest.
chest before game 3. Like
Yeah.
that is very alarming. How did you feel about how they played in game 2 relative to where they played maybe both in game 1 and in like the playoffs generally?
I mean, it's really hard because like Boston is they're just a completely different beast. And I feel like, I don't know, I watch way more Western Conference basketball than I do Eastern Conference just because I'm in Chicago, Western Conference with the Mavericks. It's just easier for me to watch. But I feel like I at least underestimated just how dangerous of a team Boston is.
Mhm.
And I feel like in game 2, they did play better. I didn't really appreciate all of the PJ Washington game playmaking. It was
Is that
really,
what
really
we're calling it?
yeah, it was really, really hard to watch. And it's funny too, because right before that game, I wrote about like, oh yeah, they need to get him more involved on offense, yada, yada, yada. They did, and it went god awful. So now they have to figure out what to do for game 3. But I mean, I don't know. I just feel like everything that I'm like thinking of like, oh, they could do this. And it's like, well, no, because Boston can just do this. And it's like, I feel like I'm glad I'm not an NBA coach because I would have no idea what the hell I'd be doing. So I can only imagine what's going through Jason Kidd's head right now and the rest of the coaching staff, because this team is, I'm like at a loss of words for how good Boston is through the first 2 games.
Well, there are swing moments in every game. If you're taking notes in the game, you're watching stuff. Oftentimes you look back and go, all right, if this had gone differently, maybe this had gone differently. There were like 6 things in the second half that really went against the Mavericks, like 50-50 balls. Do you remember it was a 3 that started the second half that I thought hit the underside of the backboard? And it falls directly into Tatum's lap, and he gets an and one. Whereas, who was it? Derek White had thrown up the shot. I'm pretty sure it was a shot clock violation.
Yeah.
Just doesn't get called. Happens. That stuff happens. I mean, we watched like weird 50-50 balls, Mavericks, Wolves. There was the aforementioned, you alluded to this, but the PJ Washington at half court thing where he turns and throws the ball back to Luka. That's just going to have a space in my brain. Like I don't, because he's been very good for the Mavericks and he's done some things I haven't liked, but he doesn't often make he can't hit shots on occasion. And I'm like, Brett, buddy, do you need glasses? That sort of thing. But that's one of the bigger brain farts I've ever seen from him. And I'm just like, so that was one of them. I mean, there's the no call against PJ, which I guess I actually understood it in real time because I didn't see it. I had the broadcast on mute and I wondered why he didn't dunk. And that's another one. So there's elements every game, but with the Celtics shooting, I think the Celtics are shooting 32% from 3 for the series. You've got to find a way to win that one.
Right. Well, yeah, it's that game too. The entire game, I was just sitting there like, if the Mavericks don't win this game, this is a lost opportunity. They're shooting horribly from 3, and they just threw it away. I mean, because Dallas was shooting worse from 3. So you're not going to win games if Luka's kicking it out to the corner and Josh Green is missing 3-pointers and PJ Washington is missing and Kyrie hasn't made a 3-pointer all series. Like, it's awful.
Do you see any potential solutions past like make shots guys? Because I really don't.
I don't, because it's a really, really, really tough matchup for Dallas. Like the way that Boston plays on offense alone, like it spreads Dallas's defense so freaking thin. Like, it's a pick your poison situation. You want to limit the points in the paint, but you're spread out to the 3-point line. So you're either giving up an easy layup at the rim or you're allowing Derek White to shoot a 3-pointer. Like there's not a lot of options on that end. And then on offense, like I'm watching Kyrie Irving not being able to use his quickness and his speed to get by anybody in this series right now. That's something that I've like never seen before, but it's because Boston has all of these lengthy, strong defenders that he can't get past. So it's like, I don't know what you have to do because there just doesn't seem to be anything combating the way that Boston's playing or how they play.
Yeah. And then I turn on the television and, for all of us who are strange enough to listen to a podcast on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:30 live, when you hear things on the television, like Michael Wilbon lovely man, suggesting Tim Hardaway Jr.
Oh no. I did not hear that. That's not good.
He's done it every game. And then even Zach Lowe did it. And he's like, why are we going to turn to Tim? And it's like, let's just say Tim is a potential answer on offense, because I think his shooting's that kind of fun. Nobody seems to recognize that poor guy could not stay in front of a stationary object. He just makes the wrong call. He tries hard. He really does. Yeah. It's not for lack of effort. He just doesn't know what to do.
Yep. Yeah. And it's really interesting because like Tim Hardaway Jr., like he's such a, microwave shooter and everything. I don't know what's going on. Does he have the yips? I don't know. But like even did he? I can't remember the last game he just played in. He checked in for a couple of games or a couple minutes, and he's just like airballing 3-pointers. And I'm like, I don't understand. This was a dude who like back in December, November, people are like, oh, 6th man of the year type of guy. And then he just fell off a cliff. I have no idea what happened. It's insane to me.
So Tim's been with the team for so long. It feels like he comes with the building. And the first 60 something games under Jason Kidd. So like right up, so he hurt himself against Golden State in January 21. It's like same game Dwight Powell came back from his Achilles.
Yeah.
And then like the first 25 games last season, he went on a 60 game span where he shot like 32% from 3. And he's just so, because I was driving me crazy. I'm like, I remember Tim Hardaway being able to shoot. And then what happened in, I guess it was 21, game 3, May of 21. So game 3 of the Western Conference Finals at home in Dallas. His shot, up until that point, his shot had been like incandescent. And then he just died.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and if you look at the shooting splits, I mean, it's like a statistical anomaly that doesn't make any real sense. But that's kind of the Tim Hardaway experience for you.
Like I would love for, like what Wilbon and Zach Lowe are saying, like put him in the game and, maybe he gets you like 15 points off 3-pointers. That would be great if he could make a shot, but he can't like.
Well, we used to impose the Davis Bertans rule where it's like, hey, if you're going to put that guy in the game and he misses his first 3 shots, take him right back out.
Get him out. Yep.
Fine.
Absolutely.
Like test the waters, but don't do the poor thing where you leave him in there for 9 minutes to die on the vine.
Yeah. It's really, it's unfortunate to watch too. Cause when Tim Hardaway Jr. is cooking, it's like the funnest thing in the world. But when he's not, it's like, oh my God, why is he on the team type thing?
All right, so we're about 17 minutes in. I won't keep you too much longer here, but guys, if you're listening on the stream, if you could do me a favor and consider liking, leave a comment when the video is done. Those things all help with the algorithm. I'd appreciate it. If you're here live and you've never seen the show before, go ahead and click the subscribe button after the game. My co-host Josh Bowe and I will recap and cover kind of what we thought happened and why. And then after that, just because it's been the playoffs, I've been staying on for at least another hour to bring Mavs fans up, just like Jasmyn and I are talking, and you can talk basketball with me until the wee hours of the morning. I promise you, everyone, it's much more fun than talking to anyone on Reddit or Twitter, where people lose all sense of humanity and just scream at each other. It's a lot more fun to talk basketball with friends or even casual enemies. I've not had any Celtics fans on yet, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. I might ask you, if you're from the South End, though, to say the word aardvark. All right, I'm going to insert some ads here, and then Jasmyn and I will be right back. Yeah, I'm really professional. I just do this after the fact. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm trying to think, like, what are the other elements of this? Like, so one thing you hit on earlier, you wrote a really good article in season, really going at head coach Jason Kidd, because he wasn't doing a very good job.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's important, I think, to acknowledge. Kidd has been phenomenal in the playoffs, but he wasn't doing a good job in the regular season.
Right.
Why do we think that is? What about it? What has turned Kidd into what I keep referring to as the 16-game coach?
I don't know, because I mean, I feel like we saw the same thing in 2022, the Western Conference Finals.
Well, but then their solution was to cut the rotation to 7 guys, and then the other solution was, we're going to play so hard. Yeah. And the play hard adjustment, it can work. It's not sustainable.
I just think that Jason Kidd's really good at making adjustments. Like even in that Sun series 2 years ago, like he just outcoached Monty Williams. Like he just did. And throughout these playoffs, finals not included, I just feel like the adjustments that he's made, and I think it's also different because you're playing a team at least 4 times in a row. So you can learn, all right, this is what they're doing. You're making these adjustments versus on a game to game, 82 game schedule. It's a lot more like a lot different of a situation going on.
Sure.
And I think that there are some coaches built for regular season coaching and coaches who are built for, I can make adjustments either on the fly or game to game. And I think Jason Kidd has shown that he can be a 16 game coach, like you said.
Do you think that he needs a certain kind of roster to compete?
Yeah, I think that he needs guys. I think that we saw that last year. Some of the criticism that I even placed on him is, and I wrote this in conjunction of criticizing him, is like, yeah, some of it was roster construction last year, for instance, is why they flailed so badly. But this year, after the trade deadline, they got Gafford, they got PJ, and the defense got better. And I think that it's definitely, I think any coach in the NBA, the way you coach is based on the roster that you have around you. So.
Yeah, and I've sort of held the opinion too that he's a 90s basketball player, though he was a fast break player. I also think he really enjoyed the muck of 90s basketball. He enjoys physicality. I think the rule changes have leaned into his sort of personal basketball philosophy of just, if you're going to score, it's going to be a war. I think that's helped a little bit as well. I do wish, this is just a me thing, and it's a me thing because I'm a dad, and I enjoy when people in hierarchies kind of protect the people that they are that they're working with and working above. The fact that he never gets like a technical foul on behalf of any Maverick ever makes me a little bit crazy.
Yeah, but it is an interesting, like, he has such like a, I don't know if you call it like a calming presence. Maybe the players would. I've talked to Jason Kidd before, like in the locker room and stuff like that, but he's just very like even keeled when he talks. Like even like the tone of his voice, he doesn't really get like overly excited or overly angry. And that shows when he's, like you said, doesn't really get technicals. But then there's like the moments where like, I can't remember if it was in the Western Conference Finals or which round it was. I think it was like Luka fell on the ground and then he's like running over to help him up and like get him to get on the other side of the floor. Like he's got that in him, but he's not like I'm gonna yell and scream type of guy.
The phraseology that he's used in a lot of post-game things and pre-game stuff where he's talked about not as much telling them what to do as much making suggestions from a former like player. I think that's like a small but valuable distinction over the course of what he does. Jason Kidd is it's been such a roller coaster for all of us.
And I also think that him being, like Kyrie's said a bajillion times how he, looked up to Jason Kidd when he was growing up and stuff like that. That matters to these players. And,
that's true.
Like when he was with the Lakers, LeBron James loved Jason Kidd. So that alone carries a lot of credence in these locker rooms with these players. And they don't need somebody to yell at them all of the time. And
I forget that too. Like when you're a professional and this is your job, if you cannot get it up to play basketball on your own, then that like that's on you, and I think that actually leads both Jason Kidd and that sort of line of thinking leads very well into what I wanted to talk about next is what do we make of Kyrie, and do we think he will at least make a 2-game appearance?
I do. I think that there's an inevitable swing going to happen. I think it's going to start in game 3. I think that like similar to how I said, like the Mavericks have overcome a 2-0 deficit. So has Kyrie that won him a championship in 2016. Like he's hit one of the most famous shots in NBA Finals history after him and the Cavs were down 2-0 against the Warriors. So the one thing that like kills me with Kyrie is like, he's so positive in his post-game press conference that it's like maddening. You're just sitting there and he's just like smiling. And that's like no knock to him. Like he should be super confident, whatever. But it's like, dude, you haven't made a 3-pointer all series. Like, it's very stressful to like watch him be so like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Like, obviously he's preaching like, we got to be urgent, this, that, and the other. But at the same time, it's like, but you have to do better. Like you specifically. So
like the hella memes are the reason those hella memes are so funny is because they just nail the feeling, because I think I would say Mavs fans, and I'll just use myself as a bellwether. I didn't really want him on the team. And I've come around to really, really loving watching him play.
Yeah.
And really, what he gave either ESPN gave an interview or it was a pregame availability, and Tim McMahon wrote up an article about it. And, Kyrie's not the kind of person to ever say, I'm sorry. I don't think he's ever going to say he's sorry for anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he acknowledged that he is a different person than he was is something that speaks to me a great deal. And I've tried to appreciate that. And so I do think the overall experience of watching him has been really fantastic. And so a lot of fans in like a post-game show, like you can read the comments, there's a couple guys in there just killing him. I just can't bring myself to do that because I still think that he has something in him, and it's not like he's dead to rights against this Boston team.
Yeah.
He had 2 very bad games, and sometimes all it takes is one thing, and a guy figures it out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I think that like in game 2, even in game 1, he had looks. He just wasn't like there were like a couple open threes that he had in game 2. He just missed.
That's right.
It's not like he's like not able to create for himself all of a sudden. Like again, like
there's one possession where Jaylen Brown had him in manacles on the sideline.
Yeah.
That was really like, but to me, that was much more, Jaylen Brown is super impressive than Kyrie Irving doesn't have it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's also not the matchup that you even want. Like, you don't want Jaylen Brown guarding Kyrie Irving. That's an awful mismatch for Kyrie. So I think he'll figure it out. I hope he figures it out. But yeah, I can't imagine he'll make a 3-pointer because
I do think he'll make a 3-pointer.
So that'll be first box to check off there.
Be nice. It'd be really nice.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost coming up on the half-hour mark. I've asked you a lot of different things. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you would like to kind of get off your chest before the Mavericks play in Game 3, rest of the series?
Trying to think. Game 2 feels like so long ago.
It does.
Giant breaks in between games.
I'm a little while you're thinking, I'm just going to get something off my chest I've been thinking about. I'm a little worried about Luka only because I think that fans have gotten so used to him hitting incredible shots that we don't properly appreciate the level of difficulty of his shot making in Game 2. He was dropping stuff in that Dirk would make Dirk stand up and applause from the mid-range. And that stuff comes and goes. Like, it's tough. The reason it's an analytically difficult shot compared to the 3 and to the rim is just it's not. Guys aren't great at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find myself a little worried because I think the Celtics game plan will continue to be let Luka go to town and we will deal with everything else.
I'm not really worried about Luka. That's like the one thing I'm not worried about. Like, injuries aside, like I know it's like, he got an injection before Game 2. He's going to get another. He got an injection before Game 2 and still had 30 whatever points he had. Incredibly efficient. He was gassed by the fourth quarter.
He was, He had 13 in the first 12 minutes, and then he had 17 over the next 40 or 30 something. So it's like, that's a little, But, I think if a Kyrie shot goes down, because you see these Luka possessions where he's like, you guys go deal with it.
Right.
Then that takes some of the burden off of him.
Right. And I think that's what Game 2 is like, Luka was doing so much in the first quarter, and I think he was hoping like, all right, Kyrie will step in maybe second quarter, second half, whatever. That never happened. And then you see him hunched over with his hands on his knees, like gassed. And so it's like, all right, well, that's not what you want. But I'm not really concerned because if Kyrie does step up or if PJ's shots start falling or if Derek Jones Jr. becomes visible again, I don't know where he's been either, then I think that takes some off of Luka's plate, and then he won't be as exhausted by the time there's like 5 minutes left in the game.
And we just need, the Mavericks as a team, you had one made Dante Exum make. You need one role player to not die. I think not necessarily play amazing because I don't expect Josh Green to come out and hit 3 threes.
No.
I don't expect Maxi Kleber to hit a shot ever again. That's just sort of, the way these things go with these Mavericks. But I do think that there are guys that are capable of contributing here and there to buy minutes. And when you go look at these box scores, it's really remarkable how bad some of these guys have been. Derek Jones played better in Game 2, but that's because he was probably the worst player on the court in Game 1. So
did he get blocked 2 times by KP in Game 1?
Locked on Mavs, Nick Angstadt showed a drive on a fast break where there are 3 Celtics around him.
Yeah.
And he's going, and I'm just like, what? Why?
Yeah, I feel like that's happened. Like that was like Josh Green trying to dunk on Porzingis. I'm like, I don't understand the need to like want to dunk, like test. I get like wanting to test to see, okay, is he gonna actually provide some rim protection? Maybe one or two times, but that's been killing me in the first two games. Is like I don't. He has 5 blocks through 2 games. I don't. You guys don't need to keep testing him. It's fine. Just it's ridiculous. The one thing that I will say is I can't remember when it was in game 2. But there were a couple possessions where like Daniel Gafford had a mismatch like under the rim. I think it was like Derek White. He pinned him under the rim, had a couple like little bunnies around the rim. That was nice to see. I would like to see them do that a bit more, especially if KP's not going to be in the game, then you lose your size around the rim, gives him an opportunity to get down there and get some buckets. But yeah, I mean, they need someone to do something.
Yeah. Well, making some shots will help. There's a Celtics fan in the chat talking about the Mavericks defense, and it's a very different. The Mavericks defense, I think, is in not like large part, but if no Mavericks are scoring, their defense wanes. Like that's these Celtics are a different team to defend. I'm very much looking forward to seeing if there are any more adjustments that none of us can think of for Game 3. But the old hit baskets is going to go a long way towards making things.
Or apparently putting Tim Hardaway Jr. in the game, according to other people.
I just don't know. It's like, well, he was the third best scorer in the regular season. It's like because the Mavericks had like 30, like dudes missed 30 games.
Right. Yeah.
Tim Hardaway at least plays all the time, but it's like ugh. So. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with me.
Absolutely. This was fun.
Yeah, well, we'll do something again if the Mavericks maybe have a fun offseason, because offseason talk is always fun. But I get this year, like having a baby at the start of the regular season was not my best family planning choice.
Sounds tiring.
Yeah, and so it's like, getting into the swing. I used to do way more stuff, and I'm just like, I don't, my brain doesn't work. So
yeah, I understand that. That's completely understandable.
This has been great. This has been Kirk Henderson and Jasmyn Wimbish on Kirk Your Enthusiasm. Thank you so much for hanging out. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and go Mavs.
Do you demand action on the U.S. Open this week? If you do, forget those surface level shows and check out the Pat Mayo Experience right now. You need the picks? I got them. Want to hear about Pinehurst from people on location? I got that too. Need some data and trends to impress your friends about golfers they've never heard of? I got plenty of that. Take golf seriously, but have a few laughs at the same time. Sub to the Pat Mayo Experience now, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.